The inside can now be reached only through a steel pipe. The reinforcement of the interior is now almost complete. 240 tons of steel sections were needed for the shoring work. So as not to damage the ornamentation on the walls and ceilings, the steel supports are padded with felt mats and plastic foil. All steel supports are numbered for reassembly of the temples in the same sequence. The really critical work starts with the removal of the rock above the temples. At first, the rock is attacked with stone soaring strands, and giant blocks are cut out. Jib saws are brought into use. For the men at the saws, this is only a kind of dress rehearsal. So long as they're cutting only the wall of rock around the temple, fine precision is not yet required, and they can work with broader cuts. At the sides, the rock is broken off piece by piece. Pneumatic drills can be used only on the outer sections. The vibrations are constantly measured inside the temple. More and more of the rock material over the temples is removed. 2 derricks are already waiting to take away the sawn-out blocks. 2 cavities in the massive rock face show where the temples are located. Now comes the most difficult part of the work. The finest cuts on the surfaces can be made only by hand. The rock is so brittle that contact with water would make it crumble. Each individual block must be carefully marked so that it can easily be assigned its right position when the monument is re-erected. There are 1,047 temple blocks and 7,700 blocks of other rock with an average weight of between 20 and 30 tons each. For the safe transport of the heavy blocks, special truss rods had to be made. The drill holes which accommodate the anchor trusses are filled with synthetic resin to withstand any strain possible during transport. The largest and heaviest blocks were those from the heads of Pharaoh's statues. Here, the engineers wanted to make as few cuts as possible. Before sawing starts, the cutting surfaces are protected with plastic foil. When the faces of the figures were cut, work had to proceed continuously, day and night. If there'd been any interruption in the sawing, the soft rock, interspersed with hard seams, might have crumbled due to changes in tension. And this is the moment that journalists and press photographers have waited for all night. King Ramesses gives one last majestic look at the bare facade before the special low-load transport vehicle carries him to the storage place. The two storage sites are located on a plateau near the spot where the temples are to be re-erected. The position and number of each block is registered just as if it were a book in a library. From his temporary resting place, the great pharaoh can look out on the round roofs of the houses built for 1,000 workers. He may even cast a longing gaze over the swimming pool, whose waters must seem like a mirage in the desert. The Nile has now risen above the base of the original site, but the cofferdam has stood the test. The monuments are being saved in time. As the days pass, the hand sawing of the blocks and their removal to the storage site becomes routine. Each block is transported without jolting, maintained in its original position. This ensures against breakage as a result of a sudden change in stress. The work advances farther and farther into the interior of the temple. Every day, new artistic masterpieces are brought for the first time into broad daylight. The divine pharaoh seems somewhat fearful as he looks out on this new technological age, an age which saves him from crumbling with the help of injections of synthetic resin. The supporting pillars are dismantled by means of very fine cuts. Here, work is done with extreme care. These surfaces, which have been exposed to the elements, are particularly brittle. Now, even if the water were to overflow the cofferdam ahead of schedule, the most it could do would be to cover the leg stumps of Pharaoh. The last of the wall reliefs is ready for transport. By coincidence, it bears the motto under which the salvage project is being carried out: the union of the Upper and Lower Nile as the symbol of wealth and fertility. While the dismantling work proceeds, preparations for re-erection are made on the plateau. Large-scale leveling operations have been completed. The axis has been precisely calculated to produce the same biannual miracle of sunlight. The reconstruction of the temple interior can begin. The same steel shoring sections which served for dismantling are used. The reassembly of the sections of the first facade reveals the precision with which the temple had been dismantled. The powerful blocks are easily put together. The original site has now been completely abandoned. The Nile covers it at last. But in their new location, the monuments come to life again as each block is restored to its rightful place in turn. The final phase of reconstructing the 22-meter-high statues begins. Pharaoh lives again. An exciting moment. Now comes the final test, whether the statues will look the same as before. The great engineering achievement of relocating the stone temple is not the end of the work, however. The unique, rocky landscape around the temple must also be reconstructed according to the original. A 12,000 square meter area must be re-landscaped. Cement domes are first constructed above the temple locations for placing the stones. The dome above the large temple has a spread of over 60 meters. The individual cement segments are 1.8 meters thick at the apex and 2.3 meters at the base. Some 10,000 cubic meters of cement are involved in this giant construction. The height of the cover above the apex is more than 10 meters and will have to support more than 20 tons of stone per square meter. The entire stone covering of the surface is estimated to be 350,000 cubic meters. The dome above the small temple has a spread of 25 meters, requiring more than 3,000 cubic meters of concrete. The last of the blocks, comprising the facade of the smaller temple, are set in place. More than 7,700 stone blocks must be rearranged between the temples. Now the finishing touches. Restoration work on the larger temple is necessary. The facade is made crack and weatherproof. It must withstand many more centuries. When the seams have been closed, it will no longer be evident that the temple was once sawed into individual blocks. Thus, the temples of Abu Simbel will again greet the rising sun.